Brother got my fiancée pregnant before our wedding. Now my family wants me to forgive them. But I told them to fuck off and moved away. This is going to be a long story, and it's just as crazy as it sounds. I'll try to be as succinct as possible, but there's a lot to cover here. I don't care if anyone believes this or not. It's so absurd that I need to vent also. I'm not going to sugarcoat anything, but I will omit any specifics that could identify me to anyone who is unfamiliar with the scenario. I'm 32 years old, and until a few months ago, I was engaged to my 5-year girlfriend. We'll call her Sarah, my younger brother. Mike is 29 and has always been the golden kid in our family. To truly grasp the gravity of this betrayal and why it has hit me so hard, I need to give you some background on my family and how we arrived at this point. Growing up, Mike could do no wrong in our parents' eyes, whereas I was continually chastised and punished for minor infractions. This wasn't your average sibling rivalry or subtle favoritism. It was obvious and intense. Mike would break something and I would be accused. He'd start a fight and I'd get grounded. If we both got straight A's, he'd get a new video game console, and I'd get a pat on the back and a reminder to keep it up. Our parents, Tom and Linda, were constantly making excuses for their actions. Mike's younger, he needs more attention. Nor you're the older one. You should know better, nor Mike's just more sensitive. We have to be careful with him. The relentless assault of false standards and gaslighting made me feel useless and despised in my own house. As we grew older, the preference became more evident. When I was accepted into a good college on a partial scholarship, my parents scarcely recognized it. However, when Mike opted to attend community college, they gave him a lavish celebration and purchased him a car to travel in. Never mind that I had been biking 5 miles each way to my part-time job. For several years, I moved out as quickly as possible. To avoid the toxic environment at home, I supported myself through college by working 2 jobs and taking out loans. Meanwhile, Mike dropped school after 1 semester, citing that college was not for him. Our parents wholeheartedly backed his decision, commending him for knowing himself and not conforming to societal expectations. They even financed his string of failed business enterprises. Over the following few years, regardless of how much distance I tried to put between myself and my family, they always found a way to bring me back. Holiday dinners were a nightmare of subtle insults and not so subtle parallels. Oh, you're still in that entry-level position. Well, Mike is considering establishing another business. He's very entrepreneurial. Never mind that I was establishing a secure profession. While Mike depleted our parents' retirement money, despite everything I tried to keep my friendship with Mike, he was still my brother after all. However, it was always one-sided. I'd reach out and attempt to connect, but he'd either ignore me or find a way to make the conversation into a game he could win. If I was promoted, he would suddenly have a big opportunity coming up. If I started dating someone, he would inevitably be in a serious relationship. I met Sarah while trying to reunite with Mike. She was a friend of one of his short-lived girlfriends, and we clicked immediately. Sarah was everything I wanted in a partner. Brilliant, humorous, kind, and stunningly beautiful. We began dating, and for the first time in my life, I felt truly satisfied and valued. My folks obviously were not pleased. They made sarcastic remarks about Sarah being out of my league, and asked what she saw in me. Mike, on the other hand, became quite interested in my life. He was always asking about Sarah, wanting to know everything about her at the moment. I was just relieved that he seemed to care about things in my life. Looking back, I should have noticed the red flags. Sarah and I moved in together after a year of dating, and it was fantastic. We both had solid professions, traveled and discussed the future. I began to believe that just maybe I could have the life I had always desired. A good profession, a loving partner, and perhaps children. Eventually, I proposed to Sarah on our 4th anniversary. It was nothing fancy, simply a simple supper at home and a moving speech. I was ecstatic when she said yes. We planned to have a long engagement and spend our time arranging the wedding. We weren't rushing. We had our entire lives ahead of us. Or so I believed when we told my family about our engagement. Their emotions were diverse. To say the least, my mother put on a fake smile and remarked, "Oh, how nice," in a tone that implied it was anything but. My father grunted and murmured, "Good luck with that," before returning to the television. Mike, however, had the weirdest reaction. He congratulated us, but there was something strange about his smile. Almost predatory. I dismissed it at the time, attributing it to my own fears. The following year was filled with wedding plans and job stress. Sarah and I were both working long hours at our jobs to save up for the wedding and a down payment on a home. We hadn't seen each other as much as we used to, but I assumed it was simply a phase. Every partnership goes through difficult times, right? Looking back, I should have seen the indications. Sarah grew distant always on her phone, smiling at texts from people she swiftly dismissed as business friends. She began going out more with her companions, arriving home late and smelling of wine and cologne. But I fully trusted her. I never considered that she may be cheating, let alone with my own brother. Sarah began acting strangely around 4 months ago. She was moody, irritated, and always nauseous. I was excited by the possibility that she might be pregnant. We hadn't tried, but we had discussed the possibility of having children in the future. I began to plan how I would help her, thinking nursery colors and baby names. Then one night, she sat me down with tears in her eyes and delivered the bomb. She was pregnant, but it was not mine. I was stunned. We hadn't been intimate in a while due to our hectic schedules, but I never expected her to cheat on me. When I asked who the father was, she broke down and mumbled, "It's Mike." My entire universe came crashing down at that moment. Everything I thought I knew, everything I had based my existence on came crumbling down. I could not breathe, I could not think. All I could feel was an overwhelming sense of betrayal and loss. Sarah attempted to explain her words, coming out quickly between sobbing. Apparently it began during our engagement party. Mike had approached her and informed her that she was making a mistake by marrying me. He played on her insecurities, telling her she could do better, and that he could provide her with everything. I couldn't. It wasn't a one-time occurrence. They'd been having an affair for months. I kicked Sarah out that night. I couldn't bear to look at her, or be in the same room with the lady who had deceived me so totally. She begged me to forgive her, explaining that it was a mistake and that she loved me, but all I could think of was how many times she had lied to my face, and been with my brother while wearing the ring I had given her. After Sarah left, I contacted Mike. I can't recall what I said. It was all a swirl of wrath and pain. He initially tried to play it casual, claiming that it was merely a drunken mistake and had no meaning. But when I questioned him, he became defensive, saying, "Well, maybe if you'd been a better fiancé, she wouldn't have come to me." I saw red. I got into my car and headed to his apartment, determined to do something that would make him regret what he said. I'm not sure what I was planning to do, but when I arrived, our parents were already there. Mike apparently called them first, telling them a narrative about Sarah seducing him and how sorry he was. And you know what they believed him? They always do. My mother immediately began lecturing me about forgiveness and family, while my father simply stood there with his arms crossed, looking disappointed in me but not in his beloved Mike. I tried to explain what had actually happened, but they wouldn't listen. They kept telling me that I needed to forgive Mike and support Sarah throughout her pregnancy, because family comes first. I lost it. Years of pent-up resentment and anger spilled forth. I told them exactly how I felt about their twisted sense of devotion, how they'd always favored Mike over me, and how they'd never taken my side or backed me. I told Mike that he was no longer my brother and that he had died. I told my parents they could have the son they'd always wanted. Because they didn't have me, I stormed off, ignoring their cries and pleads. I drove for hours with no destination in mind, only a want to be away from everything and everyone. When I eventually got home, I discovered dozens of missed calls and messages. Sarah begged for another opportunity. As Mike alternated between apologies and accusations, the majority, however, came from my parents, who demanded that I grow up and make amends. I ignored them all, rarely eating and sleeping. I called out of work, depleting all of my vacation days. I couldn't face anyone, and couldn't handle the prospect of explaining what had happened. I just sat in my apartment, revisiting every detail of my relationship with Sarah, and every interaction with Mike, trying to figure out where I went wrong. It has been 3 months now. I've relocated to a new apartment, changed my phone number, and begun treatment to deal with all of this. But my family will not give up. Despite my efforts to cut off communication, they continue to intrude in my life. They've begun showing up at my office, attempting to ambush me and push a reconciliation. My mother confronts me in the parking lot, wailing about how I'm ripping the family apart. My father left harsh voicemails telling me to man up and forgive Mike. Mike himself has attempted to approach me several times, but I've managed to dodge him thus far. They've even dispatched flying monkeys, disguised as extended family members, to guilt-trip me into forgiving Mike. Aunts, uncles, and cousins I haven't spoken to in years are suddenly calling, telling me how important family is, and how I should let bygones be bygones. It's as if they're in another reality, where Mike and Sarah made a little mistake, rather than a life-altering one. I received a message from Sarah yesterday. She is keeping the baby and intends to co-parent with Mike. And guess what? My parents are overjoyed to become grandparents. Forgetting the circumstances and the harsh remarks they used to make when Sarah was with me, the letter was full of apologies and explanations, including how she and Mike discovered real love via this terrible scenario. She even had the nerve to suggest that she hoped we could all become friends eventually for the sake of the child. I am at my wit's end. Part of me wishes to sever ties altogether and start over somewhere else. Perhaps moving to another state, changing my identity, and creating a new life where no one knows about this mess. But another part of me is so outraged that I want to stay and fight, to show them how twisted up the situation is. I don't know what to do now. The treachery has had an impact on all aspects of my life. I cannot take being alone with my thoughts. I haven't even considered dating again. The idea of trusting someone like that scares me. I've also lost friends over this. Those who believe I should take the high road and reunite with my family, as if I'm terrible for refusing to play happy families. With the people who have wounded me the most, the idea of Sarah and Mike raising a kid together, a child who should have been mine, is like a continual stab in my gut. I understand cognitively that the child is innocent in all of this. It is not the baby's fault that its parents are lying, cheating scumbags, but I can't bring myself to feel good about its existence. My parents have begun to discuss how I should be involved in the child's life and how I will become an uncle. The concept makes me feel physically ill. How can I look at this youngster and not recognize the ultimate emblem of my brother's betrayal? So Reddit, I guess my question is, am I the idiot for refusing to forgive my brother and ex-fiancé? Am I wrong to want to lose relations with my family over this? Any help on how to proceed would be greatly appreciated, as I now feel like I'm drowning in a sea of treachery and gaslighting. I apologize for the lengthy post if you made it this far. I appreciate it. Writing all of this down has been cathartic in a way. I'm not sure what I hope to gain from sharing this validation, guidance, or simply the opportunity to scream into the void and have someone, anybody hear me edit? Holy God, this exploded up overnight. Thank you all for your help and advice. I'm astonished by the response, and it will take me some time to look through all of the comments. However, I wanted to answer a few typical questions. Yes, I have consulted with a lawyer about getting a restraining order against my family. It is currently in progress. I don't intend to have any contact with the baby. It's not the child's fault, but I can't become involved without losing my sanity. 3, for those who have inquired about my job, I have already spoken with HR about the situation. They are aware and supportive. They have strength and security at the front desk and offered me the option to work from home more frequently. I am grateful for their understanding. For many of you have inquired whether I had contemplated relocating to another city or state. It is definitely something I am thinking about. My company has offices in several other cities, so a transfer may be possible. I'm considering the advantages and cons. 5, to those suggesting a DNA test. Sarah acknowledged the affair and the timeline is consistent. I see no reason to suspect the child is not Mike's, even if it was mine. I doubt I could ever look at that child without thinking about this. 6, I've been overwhelmed by the number of people who have had similar experiences. It's upsetting to realize how widespread this type of betrayal is, but it's also strangely comforting to know that I'm not alone. Thank you all for being vulnerable and sharing. 7, to the individual who inquired if I had considered taking legal action against Mike for alienation of affection. I looked into it, but it is not recognized in my state, even if it were. I don't think I have the energy for a legal battle right now. 8, several people have noted that Mike's behavior appears narcissistic. I've started reading about narcissistic personality disorder, and much of it rings true. It helps me comprehend, but does not excuse some of his acts. 9, those who have inquired about Sarah's family are as startled and appalled as one could anticipate. They have cut off communication with her and have reached out to offer me their support. It's a minor comfort, but I value it. 10, to the individual who asked if I'd considered having my own children someday. Honestly, this entire experience has made me wonder whether I want to have a family at all, but I'm trying not to make any major decisions. While I analyze everything, I'll keep you updated if anything big happens. But for the time being, my focus is on recovering and moving ahead. Thank you again, Reddit. You have helped more than you realize. Your encouragement and suggestions have given me a lot to think about, and they have truly been a lifeline during this tough time. I may not be able to answer every remark, but please know that I read them all, and they are making me feel less alone in this update. Hello, Reddit. It's been approximately 2 weeks since my previous post, and it has been a full roller coaster. First, Thank you all for your enormous support and suggestions. I never anticipated my post to go so viral. And going through all of your responses has been both upsetting and oddly reassuring. It's disturbing how regular this type of deception is. The last several weeks have been tough to say the least. Remember how I said I was working on obtaining a restraining order? That evolved into a huge ordeal. My lawyer filed the paperwork and we had a hearing arranged. I assumed it would be simple, given the proof and the ongoing harassment, but I was mistaken. My parents arrived at the court with their own lawyer, some fancy guy in an expensive suit, who likely charges more per hour than I do in a week. They attempted to portray me as the crazy one, claiming I was ripping the family apart over a simple misunderstanding, as if Mike had stumbled and fallen into my fiancée. Fortunately, the judge didn't buy it. She issued the restraining order against Mike and my parents, but only after my mother fell into tears in court, and my father glared at me as if I had committed murder. The look on Mike's face, however, I swear if looks could kill, I would be dead. As we were leaving the courthouse, Mike attempted to approach me. My lawyer stepped in between us, reminding him of the newly issued restraining order. Mike merely scoffed and said this wasn't over, and I couldn't hide behind a piece of paper forever. I'd be lying if I claimed his words didn't shake me. But at the very least, I have some legal protection. The job situation has been another nightmare. Remember when I mentioned that my family had been showing up at my workplace? This came to a head last week. I was in a meeting with a customer when my assistant alerted me that my mother was in the lobby and raising a disturbance. Apparently, she had brought a photo album and was attempting to show my coworkers baby images of Mike and me, while lamenting about how close her boys used to be. I excused myself from the meeting and went down to the lobby, where I discovered my mother, surrounded by a number of uncomfortable-looking coworkers. She was in the middle of relating a story about how Mike and I used to bathe together as toddlers. When she noticed me, she attempted to rush towards me, talking about a baby shower. But I interrupted her. I told her she had to go right away, or I would call the police and have her removed for trespassing and breaking the restraining order. Her expression was as if I had slapped her. But after everything they had put me through, I couldn't bring myself to care. Security let her out, and I had to spend the next hour performing damage control with my employer and coworkers. Fortunately, most of them understood, but I could tell. Some were wondering what kind of drama I was bringing into the office. But it was the fight with Mike that really threw everything off track. Last Saturday, I was in the gym, trying to let out some of my frustration on the punching bag. I was so into my training that I didn't notice someone approaching me. Until I heard his voice, I swung around and there was Mike, smirking at me as if he hadn't just broken the restraining order. He began speaking loudly enough for anyone surrounding to hear. I ordered him to go before I contacted the cops, but he laughed and said he'd tell them how I had threatened him and Sarah. That was when I lost it. I swiped at him, my first landing on his jaw. He stumbled backward before lunging at me. We ended up on the floor trading blows like kids again, except this time there were no parents to separate us. No one instructing me to be the larger person and let Mike win. I got in a few nice hits before the gym staff separated us. Mike's nose was bleeding and I could feel my own swelling shut. We were both shrieking, trying to get free and get back at each other. The gym manager threatened to call the cops, which ultimately shook me out of it. I grabbed my belongings and fled. I was driving home still shaking from adrenaline when I received a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I responded. Sarah was shouting at me about how I had broken Mike's nose and that he could require surgery. I couldn't help laughing. The ridiculousness of her being upset with me after what they'd done was simply too much. I apologize if I had upset her little boyfriend, whom she had been sleeping with behind my back for several months. She began sobbing, complaining about how anxious she was, how the baby could detect her pain, and how I could be so selfish. I hung up and blocked her phone. The aftermath from the brawl was severe. The news had spread like wildfire throughout our social circle. My phone was flooded with texts from friends and family members, some supporting me, others calling me out for assaulting my poor, defenseless brother. Sarah's parents contacted me again, expressing their support for me and their displeasure in their daughter. It was a minor consolation, but at this point I'll take what I can. The restraining order does not seem adequate anymore. Mike has demonstrated his willingness to violate it, and I'm concerned about what he'll do next. The legal fallout has been a nightmare. My lawyer called me the day after the gym incident. Mike apparently filed assault accusations against me. I recounted what had happened, how Mike had violated the restraining order and provoked me. My lawyer groaned and said we'd fight it, but it might be a tough struggle. Considering that I threw the first punch, we are in the process of bringing our own charges against Mike for breaking the restraining order. My lawyer is convinced that this will benefit our case, but nothing is guaranteed. I've had to provide police statements, show them injuries on my face and knuckles, and justify defending myself against my own brother, which is humiliating Mike, and I have been banned from the gym for life. I can't blame them, but it's unfortunate that the gym was one of the few places where I felt like I could let out some of my frustration. In a healthy manner, my cousin Amy, whom I've always been close to, called me the other day. She's taken a lot of pressure from her family for supporting me, but she's staying firm. She told me about what had been going on behind the scenes. Apparently, my parents have been telling everyone that I'm experiencing a mental breakdown. They claim that Sarah and Mike's relationship began after Sarah and I split up, and that I am simply envious and unable to let go. According to Amy, most of the family is skeptical, but it's irritating to know that they're spreading false information about me. While I'm attempting to recuperate, things at work have been, to say the least, difficult. After the incident with my mother in the lobby, and the argument with Mike, which went viral on local social media, I can sense my coworkers are on edge around me. My manager called me into his office earlier this week. He began by stating he valued me as an employee and realizes I'm going through a difficult period. But then he dropped the bombshell. He believes it would be best if I took a leave of absence. Until things calm down, he suggested we call it a personal sabbatical. Paid, of course. I wanted to fight, to tell him that work is the only thing keeping me sane right now, but I knew the choice had already been made. So I agreed, thanked him for his understanding, and began to pack up. My office, as I was leaving, I overheard two of my coworkers discussing how my brother got my fiancée pregnant. I slammed my office door louder than required as I exited, taking some little satisfaction and watching them jump. I'd be lying if I said none of this was impacting me. I've started taking long drives at night to get out of my flat. Sometimes I find myself parked outside my former place, the one I lived with Sarah, wondering how my life got so messed up. In the midst of this commotion, I received support from an unexpected source. Sarah's younger sister, Emma. Emma contacted me on social media, apologizing for her sister's conduct and giving her support. At first, I was skeptical. What if this was a trick? But after speaking with her, I realized she is equally disgusted by Sarah's behavior as I am. She's been telling me about what's going on in Sarah and Mike's lives. They appear to have moved in together, living as if they hadn't just destroyed numerous lives to be together. Emma claims Sarah has been attempting to portray herself as the victim, crying to anybody who would listen about how she never intended to hurt anyone, and how she and Mike are soulmates, who found each other against all odds. It makes me sick to my stomach. But I appreciate Emma keeping me in the loop. After all, information is power. Even if it is knowledge that I would prefer, not to have the social media environment has been a nightmare. I've always been a rather private person, but this event has thrown me into the unwanted spotlight. Someone, probably one of Mike's friends, posted about our gym feud on a local Facebook page. The post did not mention our names, but it described the incident in enough detail for anyone who knows us. To figure it out, the comment area became a battleground. Some individuals defended me, claiming Mike received what he deserved. Others described me as unstable and said I needed to be locked up. I made the mistake of looking over some of the comments one night, after having too many beers. A huge mistake. I ended up hurling my phone across the room, so hard that the screen cracked. Since then, I've canceled most of my social media profiles. I can't deal with the continuous notifications and messages from folks I haven't spoken to in years who suddenly want to know all the juicy details about my personal life. With everything that has happened, I have realized that I cannot stay in this city any longer. There are too many memories and chances to run into Sarah, Mike, or my parents. I've started looking for internal moves, and there's a promising opportunity in our Seattle office. It's not ideal. I've never been a fan of continual rain, but at this point, I've moved to the moon to avoid all of this turmoil. I haven't made any final decisions yet, but the concept of a fresh start is becoming increasingly intriguing. New city, new apartment, new life where no one recognizes me as the guy whose brother cheated on his fiancée. My folks have been unusually silent since the restraining order was granted. I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop, for them to figure out a new method to force their way back into my life. Sarah has been spreading the word about her pregnancy far and wide. Emma tells me she's been posting continuous updates on social media, ultrasound photographs, belly shots, and so on, with a message about how blessed she and Mike are. and how thrilled they are to start their family. Each new piece of information feels like a fresh wound, triggering the pain just as I thought I was beginning to recover. So that is where things stand right now. 2 weeks ago, I believed my life couldn't possibly get any worse. Yet it has. I'm still angry and wounded. But also weary. I am tired of justifying myself. So Reddit, I suppose this is less of an update and more of, I'm not sure, a cry into the void. I'm not sure what I'm asking for right now, advice, pity, or a time machine that allows me to never introduce Sarah to my brother. Whatever happens next, I will attempt to keep you all informed. Your encouragement has meant more to me than you can realize. It's nice to be reminded that there are still good individuals in the world, even when it feels like everything is full of betrayal and deceit. Final update. Hello, Reddit. It's been a week since my previous update, and I'm here with what I expect to be my final post on this whole disaster. First and foremost, I'd like to thank everyone for their help and guidance throughout this journey. Your writings have been a lifeline in the worst times of my life. So where to start? A lot has happened in just 7 days. And I'm still trying to digest everything. I guess I'll start with the major news. I'm relocating, yes. I took the risk and accepted a transfer to our Seattle office. It was not an easy decision, but after everything that had happened, I felt I needed a new start. The choice came following an especially difficult day last week. I just returned from another meeting with my lawyer regarding Mike's assault allegations. When I saw a note in my mailbox, it came from Sarah. I almost tossed it out before opening it, but curiosity got the best of me. Inside, there was an ultrasound image and a handwritten letter stating how pleased she and Mike were about their baby. She went on to say that she hoped I could find it in my heart to be pleased for them, and that the baby would be delighted to have its uncle in its life. I saw red before I realized it. I grabbed my phone, unblocked Sarah, and dialed her number. She picked up on the second ring, and I simply let go. I informed her exactly how I felt about her. Mike and their beautiful little family. I told her she was insane if she believed I'd ever want to do anything with that kid, and that she, Mike, and the baby could all go to hell. It wasn't my best moment, but I felt like I finally shouted everything I'd been keeping back. That's when I realized I couldn't stay in this city anymore. That same night, I called my supervisor and informed him that I wanted to transfer to Seattle. He was relieved, to be honest, I believe. He was concerned about how all of this drama would affect the company. He promised to expedite the papers, and by the next morning it was official. I had 2 weeks to collect my belongings and relocate across the nation. My family and social circle were quick to learn about my move. My folks, unsurprisingly, were outraged. They turned up at my place unexpectedly, again breaking the restraining order to try to talk me out of it. My mother was crying, accusing me of abandoning the family, and my father was furious, yelling at me for being selfish and immature. I didn't participate. I simply phoned the police and had them removed for breaking the restraining order. As they were let out, my mother yelled at me that I would regret it. That family was everything and that I was wasting it. I immediately closed the door and returned to packing. Mike reacted differently. He didn't try to contact me directly, most likely due to the current legal difficulties. But he did write a lengthy message on social media about how some people can't handle seeing others happy, and how he and Sarah were rising above the hate to focus on their new family. It was definitely intended for me. As he attempted to portray himself as the victim, I'll confess, it stung to see how many people liked and commented in his favor. But I reminded myself that their opinion is meaningless, because they don't know the truth. Sarah's response was the most startling. After our phone talk, she contacted her sister Emma, who had been keeping me updated on Sarah and Mike's situation, as you may recall. Apparently, my statements had a greater impact than I had imagined. Emma informed me that Sarah had broken down, stating that she realized what she and Mike had done was terrible, and was scared of the future. My cousin Amy, bless her, offered to help me pack. She even informed me more about what's going on with the family. Amy told me that my aunt, my mother's sister, had a heated argument with my mother, accusing her of always favoring Mike and pushing me away. My aunt complained that my parents were reaping the consequences of their years of favoritism. I can't say. I'm not relieved to hear that someone is finally calling them out for their behavior. My lawyer assures me that my move will have no effect on the legal case, which is currently pending. We're still pursuing charges against Mike for breaching the restraining order and defending the assault accusations he brought against me. My lawyer seems certain that the judge will see through Mike's arguments, particularly considering his history of breaching the restraining order. The fact that I'm going across the nation should also show that I'm not a threat to Mike, which may help get his charges dropped. I don't know if I'll post any further updates after this. Part of starting over is putting the past behind. And as helpful as this group has been, I believe it is time for me to move on from revisiting this narrative. I need to focus on creating my new life, rather than obsessing on the past. So I believe this is my final update. Wish me luck, Reddit. I've got a whole new life ahead of me in Seattle, and I intend to make the most of it. Thank you so much for staying till the end. If you enjoy our videos, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Have a good day. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. And hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking, real-life stories happening around you.